All right, folks, let's talk about this new moon that's coming up this week on Thursday, February 27th. It will be exact at 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the sign of Aquarius. And if you're surprised by that, you think it's in Pisces, this is because I am talking about true sidereal astrology, otherwise known as alchemical astronomy, where we account for the authentic positions of the luminaries as they are in the visible sky, moving through the constellations that are known as the zodiac, and then we're measuring the alchemical energetic effect of the luminary with its own energy, moving through the constellation with its own energy, and how that affects us here on Earth. Tropical or Western astrology, the mainstream popularized astrology that you'll hear everybody talking about mostly online, is not complete. It's not a complete system. It only measures the lower cycles of Earth. It measures the movement from light to dark since it's affixed to the equinox. It does not account for the greater celestial cycles. It also does not account for the fact that the zodiac are all actually different sizes because the constellations are different sizes. And there is a 13th sign, Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, that of hidden wisdom, right over the galactic center, which is the womb of the universe, creating a death and rebirth portal with Scorpio in the 8th house. This lens of astrology in particular is more accurate if you are here to evolve as a celestial being. If you are safe and comfortable and happy just being a human and living the same year over and over again like Groundhog Day, then tropical is for you. Now, that being said, let's get into the specific energies of this new moon because there's actually a lot going on. Now, I have had some requests actually to do some predictive astrology for March as well, because again, the mainstream astrology is so sensationalized. Okay, they're always fear mongering us, and this is because it is just the matrix in a spiritual cloak. All new age, like including Western astrology, is the matrix in a spiritual cloak because it encourages us to use our mind over our heart, and it's based on fear. When you get down to it, right? So everybody's parroting each other that it's going to be crazy. There is a lot going on in March, but there's never any need to be afraid of anything. So even though we have some intense energies going on, fear is the antithesis of what you should be experiencing. Anything that is difficult or challenging is there to build resilience. And the more that you soften and surrender into it, the easier it is. Okay. So that being said, we've got a lot happening. As you can see, there's a lot of activity all in this area of the wheel. Okay, so we've got the sun and moon conjunct, as they always are with the new moon. That's where they will be. When the moon is full, it is always opposite where the sun is. Okay, so new moon is the beginning of the lunar phase. The moon is the dark moon, the void, right? Because it's the beginning of the lunar cycle. It is the lowest point in the energy cycle of the moon. If you're correlating this to the energetic cycle of the menstrual cycle, it's like the bleed phase, okay? So if you're somebody who has a menstrual cycle, use that as your primary mode of measuring your energies and when to do and when to rest. If you're somebody who does not have a menstrual cycle, use the moon. If you're a reflector who has a menstrual cycle, you might need to use both. Make things a little more complicated. But anyways, so at this point, the new moon is always about setting a new intention for this lunar cycle, okay? Because we're at the very beginning of it. So at the sun and moon in Aquarius, this is giving innovation, okay? Innovation and empathy would be the buzzwords for this new moon in general because of the Aquarian energy, but also there's a whole lot going on in Pisces, okay? So that empathetic, compassionate, spiritual aspect of ourselves. So we've got the sun and the moon here in Aquarius. So thinking about the future, thinking about community. Aquarius is your Uranus energy as well. So Uranus is the revolutionary. So shaking things up, doing things differently, thinking futuristically. Then we've got this cluster of planets all on top of each other, basically. Okay, so it's kind of hard to see because the symbols need to be more spaced out. But this line here is Saturn. And then we've got Mercury, the North Node, and Neptune. Okay, Saturn, planet of restrictions, rules, regulation. Saturn is Capricorn energy, which is the dad of the zodiac. Okay, so it's like setting up structure, setting up things to assist you in a practical type of way. The value of discipline, hard work, patience, slow and steady, making sure you're doing things right. very uncomfortable in Pisces. Okay. Pisces is like loosey goosey, like out in outer space. It is like getting lost in the sauce. It's deep, intangible spirituality. Okay. So the Saturn in Pisces is giving spiritual devotion. Okay. Devotion over discipline. How can you be so devoted to yourself and your spiritual practices? How can you create discipline around your spiritual practices? And then we've got Mercury, which is the planet of thought, communication, transmission, how we think, also in Pisces. So we're thinking deeply, we're thinking intuitively, we're thinking in outer space. Okay. We're having ideas that are not necessarily grounded in reality. I'm using air quotes. Okay. Because what is reality? Right. It's not grounded necessarily in the physical. It's like the ethers, essentially. And then we've got the North Node, which is our Dharma, our destiny, moving away from karmic patterns and into a new way of being, a new Earth. And then Neptune is Pisces energy. Okay, nice. Neptune is Pisces. Neptune is Pisces. So it's a double whammy of Pisces energy, deep intangibility, deep introspective abilities, like the value of receptivity, and so on and so forth. Okay. So all of these planets are right on top of each other. So this is giving basically thinking differently about discipline in order to accelerate or clear pathways towards your dharma. Okay. You have to think differently about discipline in order to step into your dharma as a celestial being. And that's how I would sum up this little conjunction right here. This is also giving really big leaps in how you approach service and work, right? Like work doesn't have to be toiling away, and it doesn't have to be like entrapment and slave kind of mentality like we've been given, right? Like you have to work hard. If you don't work hard, you don't get what you want. Like, no, you don't necessarily have to work hard in a way that feels bad. Hard work can feel good if you're connected to your dharma, right? Hard work can feel amazing if it's fulfilling to you on a heart and spiritual based level. Okay. When it's coming from the internal locus, not from the external locus. And that is this is the shift that we're going through. Like, if I had to deduce the entire collective's journey right now, it's moving from the external locus to the internal locus. Okay. And we're moving from the illusion of separation, where we're all individual beings having to fight for resources and defend ourselves, into a more interconnected community where we realize that everybody is us in a different body. There's no need to fight or hoard resources. There's no need to be oppressed externally or controlled externally, because everybody can control themselves internally. We are all able to control ourselves internally. We've been infantilized in our society and convinced that we need all these external rules and regulations in order to be safe. But that is a myth that is no longer relevant where we are moving into. Okay. So restructuring how you think about work, devotion, service, as well, creative yet disciplined thinking, essentially, right? So like that devotion over discipline. The challenge with this, because Pisces does give us like a lot of capacity to get lost in the sauce, like be out in outer space and be apathetic or just not care, right? Because you're so detached. So that is the shadow of this kind of energy. Now, aside from this conjunction of all of these 4 planets here that I've just been going into, oh, they're not all planets actually. The node is just a marking, but anywho. We also have Venus and Chiron joining the pack in Pisces. So Venus is the planet of values, love, relationships, what we appreciate. And it is just going to it's going into the pause for retrograde. So as a day or two after this full moon, it will be in full retrograde for 40 days in Pisces. Okay. So we're going to have a very extended, long period of time of reconsidering the value of receptivity, reconsidering the value of the feminine energy. And this has nothing to do with gender. Okay. We're not talking about matriarchy over patriarchy. We are talking about the feminine receptive energy that every single human possesses, because we all have both polarities within us. Okay. So in our society, the masculine, externally focused, doing, contracted energy has been prioritized and highlighted as the only thing that correlates to your value, like your value is connected to your productivity in our current paradigm. So this energy of 40 days of Venus being retrograde in Pisces is going to bring things to the surface for us to reconsider how valuable it is to be in the void, how valuable it is to be able to receive, that you don't need to be doing so much. And actually, when you do so much, it ends up going poorly for us in the long run. Okay. Chiron is the wounded healer, the asteroid that pushes on our wounds, and that is in Pisces, right? So it's pushing on our wounds around spirituality and the receptivity of that. Okay, so a lot of energy going on in Pisces, supporting the intangible, the void, and the value of receptivity, thinking differently about structures and discipline that can support your service, like flipping the value of your perception, I should say, of hard work, and getting you into a state where you can value doing less, or when you are working hard, having that connected to your dharma and thinking differently about that in order to move into a new way of being through your dharma. So this is a lot of air and water energy going on. We also have Mars direct in Gemini just as of last week. So it's started its station direct last week. By the time we get to the new moon, it will be moving directly again through Gemini. So Mars is the planet of doing, assertion, like your idea of yourself. It is Aries energy. Gemini is mutable air. So it's that flexible thinking. It's seeking knowledge. It's seeking different perspectives. So Mars in Gemini is seeking different ways of looking at how you do things, how you assert yourself, considering different positions, considering different ways of thinking, essentially. So that is more air, more thought and emotion, right? So we do there's a potential to be a bit ungrounded with this moon. We do have some supporting energy in Taurus, but like from outward planets, Uranus, the planet of shaking things up. So there's just this energy of being able to tangibly change the physical realm, as well as Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion. And the sun and the moon, this new moon is actually going to be in a square to Jupiter. So the square is an angle that can create a little bit of tension when it comes to these energies. So there could be some tension between your physical environment and this new way of thinking. You might be outgrowing your physical environment, your current circumstances. You might find your job or your home or your car or the people around you, your clothes, like even your physical body, right? Like you might find some stickiness or resistance, or like you're basically like a butterfly busting through the cocoon, or a snake shedding its skin. Like the snake gets bigger and it's got to be uncomfortable to shed that skin, right? But it's got to happen. So you might have that kind of energy happening. There is also a square between Mars and Venus. Okay, so these two are opposites. They're the polarity, the feminine and the masculine. Okay, so we've got Venus valuing receptivity and Mars thinking differently about how it's asserting itself. And in a square, they're kind of pushing against each other. So this is really giving more energy behind what I was talking about, this idea of the value of receptivity over doing so much. Now, this is not to say that we don't need to do anything, okay? The law of three, one of the primary laws of creation, according to the fourth way school tradition, states that for anything to come into being, you need one part doing, one part receiving, and one part blank space, okay? So within this context of the masculine, the Mars is the doing, the Venus is the receiving, and the blank space comes when you freaking chill and let that shit marinate, okay? Like think about that. Think about where you're doing too much in your life. It's probably mostly everywhere because we've been conditioned to do, okay? We've been conditioned that our productivity is inherently correlated to our worth, all right? You're not valuable unless you're doing something. It's really difficult for most people to take a day off without guilt tripping themselves, okay? So this new moon in particular is really giving, like, reconsider that. Okay, set some new intentions around your ability to rest, around your ability to receive, around how it is actually productive to rest and do nothing, because that is when your creative insights sneak in the back door. And when you have space and you're resourced, what you're creating feels good, right? It feels good to work hard when you are resourced. It feels bad to work hard when that is all you do. When you take time to rest and receive, you are then able to be productive and do more in that shorter period of time. Now, this also reflects the energy of the new moon in general, and what I was saying about how that correlates to the feminine menstrual cycle, okay? Like right before you bleed, if you're someone with a uterus that bleeds, you know what I'm saying, okay? Like you feel a bit crazy, you're really hungry, and you're tired, okay? You got to lean into that shit. You got to eat more. You got to rest, and you have to be soft and kind to yourself. Give yourself a little bit more grace, okay? And the same thing happens to all of us when it comes to these lunar energies. They affect us the same way. This is a low point in the energy cycle. So don't push yourself to be doing so much. Frickin' rest. Now, finally, as far as aspects go, I will mention as well, we have some trines between the sun and the moon because they're at the same point, and Mars, as well as Mercury. Whoops, that's Chiron. Mercury and Mars. Okay, so Mercury as well as the sun and moon both trining Mars. So this provides supportive energy to Mars thinking differently. Thinking differently, seeking new knowledge, seeking new paradigms, being flexible in its thinking. Okay, so we have Mercury supporting that, which is double thinking energy, right? And the sun and the moon with the new moon, intentional energy. The sun always illuminates things. So just really highlighting the power that we have here as far as changing how we be in the world, right? Like how you think influences how you do, which is Mars energy. Okay, so Mars, the doing planet, is really considering how to do things differently in the context of everything that I just said. Okay, so like I said, to sum this up, I would say that the buzzwords for this new moon event, the lunar event, would be innovation and empathy. Innovating a new way of being and thinking in the world, and valuing empathy, compassion, and depth. Okay, as far as actionable items, like what I would be doing as far as my new moon rituals or leading up to this, I would be thinking about setting some futuristic goals. Where do I want to be? Now, I am personally, and not a, I'm like oppositionally defiant. I also have pathological demand avoidance. So when it comes to like 5-year plans, it is not something that I want to do as far as like being meticulous about the rigidity of that. But there is some value in future thinking, the feeling of where you want to be. If you could be anyone and do anything with your time, what would you be doing? What are you here to do? Who are you here to serve? Right? Thinking about these sort of things in a more innovative or outside of the box kind of context, and setting some goals for yourself. Think big. Think really big and intangible. Think so outside of the box that nobody has ever thought about it. Do not compare your ideas to anybody else's. You are here to do something that is so unique that it has never been done before. So there is nobody to compare it to. That kind of vibe when it comes to setting these sort of futuristic goals. Embrace compassionate discipline, okay? Use a little structure, right? Get that devotional energy, right? Sometimes we do have to push ourselves to do uncomfortable things, but when we're pushing ourselves to do uncomfortable things from a heart-centered, internally locused way of being, it makes a world of difference. It's so much easier to adhere to discipline when it's coming from a place of love and support for yourself. Additionally, communicating with care, okay, like with this square to Mars here, there is some energy with Chiron. Oh, it's not on this chart here. When I was looking at the tropical aspects, it did say there was a square between Mars and Chiron as well, right? So this kind of clash between our wounds in spirituality and thinking differently, being differently, right? You might have a fear of being seen as too spiritual. You might have a past life iteration where you were persecuted for being spiritual, right? Like these sorts of things can come up when it comes to these changes. And remember, whenever we're triggered, that's your treasure, okay? We're activated by these things intentionally in order to draw our awareness to them so that we can shake that shit loose and transcend it, right? Like we're here to alchemicalize that by losing density. That is what the process of enlightenment is. So there might be some spiciness between karmic patterns and wounds around your spirituality, as well as this push pull between the masculine and the feminine, doing and receiving, and really feeling a lot of pressure to do, or maybe feeling lazy or guilty about not doing. Okay. So, and then with the Mercurian influence here, just be mindful of how you're communicating. People are going to be a little touchy, possibly. Okay. Especially if they're not aware of this, because whether they are aware of it or not, these energies affect everybody. And then finally, like I said, balancing rest and productivity. I would really, really highlight rest. Like I said, this lunar cycle, at this point in the lunar cycle, we are at the lowest point in our energy. If you're somebody whose menstrual cycle correlates with that, like mine, you really need to rest, right? Like I tend to go into hibernation mode when I get to this point in my menstrual cycle, and it's just a double whammy with the fact that the moon is doing the same thing. Okay, so if you're feeling that sort of way, just lean into it. Remember, there is value in rest. There's value in receptivity, and actually, you get more done when you freaking rest. So that is what I have to say on this new moon report. I actually have openings for 5 mini readings. If you are curious how these energies are specifically affecting you, you can send me a message with the word moon, and I will offer you a sliding scale mini reading delivered by voice note, where I will compare your natal chart to this lunar chart and see whether you have any of this action pressing on your natal chart, and where and how you can specifically work with those energies. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoy this. If you like this sort of content, you know what to do. Please engage with this video in every way that you can. Leave me a comment with a few words, because that helps the algorithm. Save, share, send it to somebody who you think might benefit from it. And if you are keen to connect with others who are passionate about this outside of the box type of thinking and alchemical astronomy, stay tuned, as I am working on the back end of my new membership tier, my Bright Lights Collective, where we will be able to integrate and chat with this sort of information. So fitting, because that is my freaking future vision, and I have to enact a lot of discipline in order to do it. So can't make this shit up. All right, folks, if you're still here listening to this, I love you. You're an OG, and I will see you in the next one.